Bên mình ạ. Và det klart. Så alle får sitte på den her, så kan få bake den og flytte her. Men det
var väldigt elegant. Mycket höjd. Det kan hoppa over, men da har vi stor lyst på det. Det kan være at vi kan hoppe over.
Det där med Instagram, det är jävla fint. Boğaza da
Yes, but just for, it's like unlisted, so people can't see it unless they have the link. Good morning. Good morning. It's to see all of you here. Some of you I know very well, and some of you probably don't even know who I am or what I'm doing here. I'm gonna show you something if I can get this on. Okay. So for those of you who don't know me, you probably know this. Let me see. That's how you know me. Let me see. That's how you know me. You've seen me like that. How many of you have seen that? You've seen me walk around like that. Yeah? So you know that. And you're like, who's crazy lady with all the jackets? Right? So I hope that the outfit is not giving crazy lady with jackets. I hope it's giving more black girl magic today. Hopefully. All right, let's get started. First of all, I want to ask you, do you know anyone on that billboard there? Is that a yes? Yes. Like who? Who's this? Yeah, go ahead. Yes, absolutely. Say to you that I've always known who that was because I found out who he was because years ago, some of my girls did the Black History Month project and they talked about The Weeknd. So that's how I got to know who he was. Kind of like some of his music. So now I know who he is. Who else? Go ahead. Natalia. And who's that? Who's Nelson Mandela? Yeah, go ahead. Is he in a band? Is he a rapper? Who is he? What was that? Bingo. You're right. He was the president of South Africa. Do you know anyone else on that billboard? Go ahead. Yes. And who was he? I mean, who is he? He's not dead. Yeah, not that I know of.
He was first black president of America.
That is. Do you guys know who this lady up on top here is? Anyone? Yes? Is that Rihanna, is it? What do you think? You think that's Rihanna up there?
Eh?
Do you recognize her?
No.
No? That is Kelly Rowland. Does that ring a bell? No? You guys know who Beyonce is, right? Yes. All right, so my girl Kelly Rowland used to be in the same band with Beyonce. But Beyonce be queen of everything, and Kelly Rowland not so much, but she still has a career and everything. And down here I have some pageants. They were all from different countries, and they held international titles in the 2020s. What do they all have in common? I'm gonna start going around asking specific people, so go ahead and say what you can while you can. Go ahead. What do they have in common? Don't be ashamed or afraid to say it. Anybody? They're just afraid to say that all of them are black? Because they are. All of them are black. And what's unusual about it is up until a certain point in time, black women were not even allowed to participate in a pageant, let alone hold an international. So that's why the girls were proud to be able to do it. So let's talk about today, why we're here today. Why you're not sleeping in or doing something else, but you're here listening to me. So Black excellence is Black history too. How many of you guys have heard about Black history? Just raise your hand or not if you haven't heard. Yeah, you have heard of it? Have you ever celebrated it in your other school or anybody? No, never celebrate. Well, we're celebrating it here. Yay. So the reason why I decided to do this, why I called it Black Excellence is Black History too. It has something to do with having had opportunity to work with Black history with my students. And some outcomes were not what I expected. When I first said, okay, let's talk about Black history, I had one little girl, not naming names, and I'm not saying it happened at this school or anything. She said to me, oh, we're gonna watch all those people getting killed and getting murdered and all those slaves being mistreated. I don't wanna watch any of that. And I'm like, is that all Black history is to you? Absolutely not. Black excellence is all history. Not just about how Blacks were slaves, not just how about Jim Crow laws and apartheid in South Africa. It's about Black excellence and what we can do to improve as people, all of us. So I have a list of names here. Do you recognize any of them? Which, if you do? Yes, Natalie? Who is Toni Morrison? What do you know about her besides what's on there? She wrote a book called The Bluest Eye, and she won the Nobel Prize for Literature. All of you who are sitting here, you have a book called Citizens for English? Yes, absolutely. That book has a whole chapter about Toni Morrison. I don't know if everyone read it, but maybe later you'll take a look at it. Alice Walker, who's that? I know I wrote it there, right? So how many of you know what The Color Purple was? Did you see the movie, the musical, or have you heard of it? Go ahead. And what else did you do? Tell us. Yes? And what is it about? I'm giving you a prize for this, so go ahead. Yes, that is correct. So getting the forehead effect. I love it because I love being hot, but I don't like looking sweaty. Anyway, so Sloane Stevens, never heard of her, I'm sure, because she's not that famous, but she's a tennis player, also a person of color. Jesse Iuji, race car driver. I'm celebrating these people today for Black excellence. Leighton Benta, if my students say they don't, I might be a little heartbroken. Do you know who he is? They're like, oh no, I don't remember who that is. Yeah, go ahead. Yes. Absolutely. He's an award-winning singer, actor, and entrepreneur, and he is a proud Black man. How about Renee Lesperance, who is also somebody we're honoring today? I don't expect you to know who she is, but if I say Siri, do you know who that is? Yeah. Yes? And who is that? Is that a real person? Everyone here has a phone, right? Yeah? Your phone doesn't have Siri? Or you think she's annoying? You know who Siri is, right? Yeah? So Siri, how about Alexa? Who's Alexa? Yeah, tell her.
I think it's same version, right? Siri.
Siri and Alexa, they can be, I'm sure there are people named Alexa and Siri, but Alexa is, I'm gonna call her a robot and hope that she doesn't get offended. Yes, go ahead.
Is it like a smart home system?
Absolutely, smart system. Why am I talking about this? Isn't this supposed to be about Black people? Yes, I'll get to that. So, Renee Lesperance, before there was Siri, before there was Alexa, there was Mavis Beacon. Mavis Beacon teaches typing. It was a computer game created in 1987, and all the graphics for that game, they had a photo of Renee Lesperance, who is a Black woman. She was modeling at the time, and they got her to, so she was way before Siri and Alexa. Let's talk about this for a second. So, I have been a teacher for about 35 years almost. At some point throughout the past 23 years in Norway, I experienced some incredibly horrific that pulled me out of my bubble. That bubble was a place where I thought there is racism outside in the world everywhere I go, but the classroom is my safe harbor. I'm safe in the classroom. My students are never going to attack me. I'm all right. So at some point, I found that that wasn't true. It's true for the most part, but it's not true all the time. And it was, I might cry a little bit when I say this, but I'm okay, I promise you. So I realized that we need to educate our youth to do better than how I was treated. I name names, I'm not gonna say which school it happened, where it happened. Just to give you an idea, I have worked in 4 different countries, dozens of schools, 10 of them in Norway. So, but it happened. I was verbally attacked with the M word. I was attacked in other ways. And it was not fantastic, let me tell you. I left the classroom in tears a couple of times. I felt really attacked. This should not happen anywhere, not just in the classroom, should not happen to anybody. And I would like to go back and be in a bubble where that hadn't happened, but it did. So I have a couple of choices. Do I want to be part of the problem or part of the solution? So I don't know if you saw this viral video that was circulating on TikTok I'm gonna say a few months ago, but it might have happened way before that. It was a teacher in the United States. Somebody called this teacher the N-word, and he just crashed the freak out. He beat the guy into oblivion, the student. And I'm sure that kid never called anybody the N-word again. So he solved that problem. He also lost his license to become a teacher anywhere in the world. He can't be a teacher anymore, and he went to jail. Not so fantastic. So I decided to be part of the solution. I decided I wanted to educate people, broaden your horizons, and perhaps prevent something like that from happening, if I can be hopeful for that. So I could be a victim or a target. If you don't know the difference, a victim is someone that feels everything, puts themselves in that place of a victim, and never does anything about it and feels sorry for themselves. But they can be a target and not a victim. They can be a target knowing, I know I'm blacker than Wesley Snipes everywhere I go. People can see that, and some people are not gonna like that. So I'm a target. There's nothing I can do about that. But I can also feel good about myself enough that I can do something good for society. You won't see me out protesting, breaking liquor stores with a bunch of people, the statues. I am not a fan of that, like what they did in the US with Black Lives Matter. They weren't being heard. So I would rather talk and fight my battles with words, because education is freedom. And when you have an education and you can listen to people and learn to become better, that's your freedom. You're free from the prejudices of society. You're free from the of racism in this world. So the concept of Black excellence. I'm gonna ask, Håkon, can you read that for us?
Black excellence, extreme excellence demonstrated by black people despite racist systems, beliefs, etc., that make it harder for them to achieve success or to be recognized for their accomplishments.
Excellent. So in other words, what this means, and I'm going to put it into vocabulary that you probably haven't heard, or most people haven't heard me say before, but for you to understand what this is, people are looking at you funny, they're treating you badly, they're putting you down because you're black, but at the end of the day, you're gonna slay the house down boots no matter what. That's what Black excellence is. So I have my own journey of Black excellence. I'm gonna let you sit on this for a bit, like 20 seconds. I think it's been 20 seconds. I know that you're curious about something. I'll get to that. But I'm gonna start with born free. And I'm not ashamed to tell everyone I was born in 1972. I have no shame to tell you I'm 52 years old, almost 53. So why did I title that Born Free? I feel like society should know that even though there's no more slavery in most countries, people can be born into a situation of poverty, lack of an education, in a situation that makes them still slaves to the system. In my case, I was born free because both my parents were educated and they also gave me an education. And I traveled the world and I had a fantastic upbringing. That was a privilege that most people did not have in the country where I come from. So I grew up in the US and Brazil. for a few years, back and forth. So I grew up bilingual, speaking Portuguese, English in the home. And there comes 1991. Are people wondering what that's all about? Now I'm going to tell you a story that's a bit painful to tell. But it can also be, I don't blame you if you giggle when I tell it, because it can also be seen from the perspective of I'm very bad at mathematics. I'm going to say it's been several decades since that happened. So I was growing up in the US and in Brazil, then I went back to Brazil to go to school. And in 3rd grade, they brought in the new teacher. Her name I'm going to say because I think she might be dead now, because if I'm as old as I am, she's probably dead. So the new teacher, Valdete, her name was. She comes in, cute lady, curly hair, green eyes, the whitest person I had ever seen in my life. But also in the classroom where I was in 3rd grade, most kids were either white or white passing. Do you kids know what white passing is? I should have learned my lesson a few minutes ago. People do not want to answer questions. Anyway, so white passing is when somebody is mixed, but to the world, they look like a white person. So you don't know that they're mixed, just them. I was the only black girl in that classroom. There was another girl that was she was mixed, but she was light skinned. And I'll tell you later how that plays a part in society. So we're sitting one day during recess, and I was so happy playing with my friends. For no reason in the world, this teacher says to me, "Have you ever noticed, Pollyanna, that you're the only blackie in this classroom? Everyone is lighter than you." And because I had never stopped to think about that. So I said, "No, but Isabella is kind of dark." It was the light-skinned girl. And so she said, "No, put your arm next to hers. You're the only blackie here." And that was devastating to me. Not because she said that, just being black is not a bad thing, but because all the kids were like, "Oh my God, that's true. She's the only black person here." And everybody started to chant, "Blackie, blackie, blackie," like that. And a few days later, one of the kids said, "We should not talk to Pollyanna. She's the only black girl here." And they started to ostracize me for a bit. I didn't stay home at first, but I was playing with my Barbie dolls, and I had mostly blonde Barbie dolls and one black Barbie doll. They were very hard to come across in the 80s. So I was playing with them, and I started enactments, and I started doing what I had experienced, and my mom is like, "Why are you playing like that? That's not nice. All the dolls can play together." And I'm like, "No, Mommy, that's what's happening at school." My mom was furious. She went to the school, she had her finger in that lady's nose, and she was telling her, "How can you do this to a child?" That was perhaps traumatic things for me. She did get fired, and we got another teacher that was a lot nicer, and I moved on with my life. In 1988, when Brazil celebrated 100 years freedom from slavery, I had a bit of a turning point. That's when I became a public speaker. I started speaking to young people, telling my story, talking about how it was to be a privileged kid. Even though I had everything, I had toys, I went to the best schools, I traveled, I was spoiled, rotten, but racism's ugly head was what made my existence difficult. So in 1988, I started working at the junior locals. I was 15 when this was taken. You won't understand any of this. But, well, there's no sound. This is just me talking about.
Agora, na próxima semana, a minha reportagem sobre o centenário da abolição da escravatura.
This was me talking about slavery in Britain and how it was abolished in 1888. Don't worry, I know people are looking at all the slides, are like, oh no, she's gonna talk for 20. I might not even show half of them. I just made them so I would know where to go with it. But I became a public speaker, and through this experience in the junior local news, I wrote about everything that happened in the community. It was for kids that were teenagers. It was like a teenage newspaper. We wrote and interviewed people, and it was really neat. And it was a turning point for me, having a voice. Having a voice is very important when you feel that you're oppressed. Yes? So 1988, 1990, I went back to the United States to go to high school. I did my junior and senior year in high school there. Went back to Brazil for university. 1995, 1996, I took a whole time for myself. I went to New Zealand. Fantastic, absolutely magical place. 1998, 1999, I got my master's degree and postgraduate in Australia. It's a postgraduate in education in English. So I know some people ask me, oh, so you're a teacher, but you're not really a teacher. You're teaching because you can speak Spanish, you can speak English. No, I actually studied to become a teacher. So the 2000s, they changed my life completely when I came here. So I was born Pollyanna, and notice the spelling, 2 L's and 2 N's. That's the book, The Optimistic Girl, Pollyanna, who was always happy about everything. Everything was perfect. And then the second book, the sequel, is when she starts to see that life is not as perfect as she thinks it is. I drew a parallel between that and my real life. My dad read the book and named me that. Okay, let's talk about Black History Month here at Selbo High throughout the years. I have some names there of my students who did projects for my English class, projects that stood out incredibly. So they talked about everyone that you can imagine in history. If I say Martin Luther King, raise your hand if you know who he is. If I say Rosa Parks, yeah, we know them, right? So my students talked about different people. They even talked about Snoop Dogg and all the charity work that he does for his community. I got to know who The Weeknd was and got into his music. And then had a special student, Sigrid, and I'm not just saying that because her brother is sitting there. I would have said this anyway. She did a whole book about Black musicians where she drew the pictures and wrote texting about them. It was absolutely fantastic. And then the reason why I have Harriet Tubman and the actress Aisha Hines here is because Nadia Durdal did one of the most extraordinary projects about Black History Month. By the way, I got permission from everyone to talk about them, so don't worry. So what she did was she talked about Harriet Tubman, and she also talked about the actress that played Harriet Tubman. And she drew a connection between the lives of the two and the good that they did in society. What you may not know about Black culture. What is Black culture? So I have a list of things here, and I'm sure you know the music. How many of you listen to music that's made by a Black artist? I'm sure you do, because I see people listening to Childish Gambino, who I also did not know who he was, but my students educated me about it. I did not know that Mr. Glover was also a singer. So you know the music, right? Have you heard of soul food before? Anybody? It's a type of food that they make in the south of the United States, and it's considered ethnic food. I cannot cook, so there will be no sampling of that today, but I do have candy for you that I'm gonna pass around soon. So the literature that's something that not everyone likes to read books, so you may not know a lot about authors that write beautiful Black stories, such as Toni Morrison and Alice Walker. The cinema, Black actors. Can you name a Black actor? Don't say Tom Cruise.
No, I don't think so.
Can you?
That was girl, so.
Yes.
No.
No? Can you? I know what you're all thinking. Like, I've seen that guy in that series, but what is his name? You know them, right? Yes? You have a name, or is it just the guy? Yes? Let's hear you first.
Denzel Washington.
Denzel Washington. Yes. My boy, Denzel Washington. Will Smith. Yeah, we love and we hate him a bit, right? Actor does laugh and all, but he is a good actor. I'll grant him that. Did you want to say something, young man?
Yeah.
Say something? I'm not gonna make you say anything, I promise you. So, what else is Black culture? You notice I put hair over there? What is hair culture? Have you ever thought of hair as culture? Have you? Hair is a huge part of Black culture in ways that you wouldn't be able to imagine. I'm not a big fan of the cultural appropriation phenomenon to which people are like, oh, she's wearing her hair in dreadlocks. She is not Black, she cannot do it. I'm not a fan of that. I feel like people can wear their hair in whatever way they want. If they want to wear their hair like I do my hair, I should feel good about it. Well, they copied me, so I don't think it's a bad thing. But hair is part of Black culture. Let's sit on this one for a second. I'm not a racist. I have Black friends. I don't know if I could cringe a lot more than I do when people just say, usually when people say that, something happened. They are trying to justify themselves and explain that whatever they said, whatever they did, they're not a racist. So let's talk about banter etiquette for intercultural communication. There is such a thing as banter etiquette. Banter. What is banter? Banter. Let us just say I'm at the bus stop. Somebody stands next to me. Oh, it's really cold today, isn't it? Yes, it is. We don't really know each other, we don't really have anything to talk about, but we'll kind of just banter, just having small talk. So when you talk to people of a different culture, you have to pay attention to what you're going to say. In some aspects, you might offend someone without knowing that whatever you said was even offensive. So what seems like a funny joke to you may be offensive in other cultures. I've so many racist jokes that people forget. People are, for long periods of time, they forget that I'm Black and they tell a Black joke, which is never fantastic. It could be offensive in some cultures. In others, perhaps different things are acceptable. You may not be racist, but your vocabulary may make you come off that way. Very important. Very, very important. And I'm going to show you why. It's here somewhere, I promise you. All right. To attack me. And that was the shock of a lifetime for me. I have been a visiting professor in Australia. I have taught in Brazil, university and all kinds of levels, binational centers. And I've been in Norway for almost 20 years and that had never happened. And when I tell my friends in the United States, they tell me, oh, come on, Pollyanna, you married the whitest guy on the planet. You moved to Norway. All those white people, are you really surprised? And yes, I am, because it had never happened before. I need you to give us some guidance at Selbu High School about the word, the origins of the word. And the first question is, tell us about the origins of the N-word. Where does it come? How did it become a derogatory term?
Well, start with where it comes from. So the N-word is one that was used to really oppress persons of African descent in the United States. And this goes back to slavery, a time when many African slaves were taken, bought and sold, and brought to the United States. We have many stories about that, the passage, and many African slaves dying, millions dying on ships and being brought over to the United States. And surprisingly enough, about 70% being brought to Brazil. However, I want to highlight the fact that upon slavery beginning in the United States, persons of African descent were seen as less than, were seen as property, were actually defined in the law as property. So they were not considered people. If you think of this in context, if you compare, for example, if you look at your maybe kitchen table, and you say, oh, well, that's a table. That's a table. There are some chairs there for us to sit down on, and yeah, it's just a table. Well, how do you treat a table? You treat a table as something that you use when you need it. It's for a purpose, and that's it. Well, think of it in terms of a person now, myself, that you're looking at, that you're speaking with, as a table. And so that's very hard for people to conceptualize. Even worse, not as a table, but as something that you use for labor, something that you use as a weapon, as well as abuse daily. And so if you can imagine being put to work every day, not being paid, being placed in the hot sun, the of this particular minority population being treated as concubines, or even in worse terms, as ones who were just there to take care of someone else's kids and not be compensated for it at any time during the day, during the night, and just outright abused. This was the situation, and a lot worse, if you can imagine. And so when we think of the N-word, this particular term was actually what was used to address any person of color during this time. And it was mainly used as an oppressive term, an abusive term. The term itself, N-I-G-G-E-R, is one that is definitely labeled and used as a derogatory term. If it were used in the United States, even in this current day, it would be seen and viewed as a derogatory term. It is literally, it is a term in which if you approach a person of color and called them this term, my goodness, you may encounter violence. It is that derogatory here in the United States. Now, I will say this, during the time of slavery, leading up until a time when Black people in particular were freed in the United States. And what I mean by that is a law was actually passed that declared that Black persons were no longer slaves. And really what it said was slavery was no longer allowed in the United States. And so, and this is what led, of course, to the Civil War, the fighting between the northern states and southern states. Southern states embraced slavery, northern states did not, in particular. So you saw a lot of slaves who would try to escape slavery and run to northern states to be free, to be able to actually be, people and provide a living for their families. Many persons did not survive this navigation. Oftentimes, people understand this, but it's referred to as the Underground Railroad. You can probably Google that and see what that's about. But it is a term that really digs into history, and it affects Black people in particular in a very, very hurtful way.
All right, and it's very, this part here, if you don't remember one single thing from what I have said today, that's fine. But I hope that the one thing that you come away knowing is that there is no reason for people to be mean and cruel and use that particular word for anybody. And I know, oh, but they say in the songs, yeah, all right then. But even the one with the A, just N-I-G-G-A, there's no reason for you to be using that. I mean, what the history behind it is. I feel obliged to tell you that here at school, this is not okay. Absolutely not okay. I don't care if you're saying to your white friends, oh, my Black friend said I can say it. It is not okay here. Here at school. I have no idea how it is handled in other parts of Norway, but I do know that Hilda, Vega, and Greta, and every single teacher under this roof does not accept racial slurs in this building. I hope that everyone remembers that part. So I wanted to highlight a few terms for you. I don't know if one is aware of the differences. I've heard this a lot, people pointing to someone and saying, oh, she's not really Black, she's mixed. She's light skinned, she's not Black. And you can be both, right? So ethnicity has to do with DNA. You may look a certain way and be a different ethnicity. My little daughter, she's not 18. So people still stop her and start speaking to her in different Asian languages because they assume she's Asian, and she's Brazilian. She's very Brazilian. She has a mixture of white, Black, and indigenous. So ethnicity, that's your DNA. Your identity, that might be a bit different. Some people are mixed and they are white passing and they identify as white and they don't acknowledge their Black selves, and that's okay. You do you, boo. I'm not going to stop anyone from identifying as they want to, but it's an identity. It doesn't change your DNA. World perspective. How does the world see you? So I was talking about racism and how using racial slurs, telling racist jokes. Oh, it was just a joke. I'm not a racist, it was a joke. I have so many Black friends, haha. You may be caught saying something like that and lose a job opportunity. It is not cool to be racist in 2025. I know that Mr. Trump was elected. He would get on board with that. People might like his politics, what he's doing right now, but to a certain extent, social scientists have come to a conclusion that he has normalized a lot of racism in the world, and that's not okay. But even he, as a world leader, he can't, how do I put it? He can put on you, but he can't really accept something like that. So the way the world sees you, maybe you're like, oh, I don't care what anyone thinks about me. They can say whatever they want. Well, you might want that job, right? You might want that opportunity. It is not cool. racism is not cool in 2025. Colorism is racism's black cousin that love itself very much. There are in families where people have like 7 siblings and they're like, oh no, but Kiara is prettier because she's got the good hair and she's light skinned. That's in the family, people are talking like that, that's not so bad. But when somebody doesn't get a job because they're too dark for the job, then that's colorism at its worst. Tokenism. I'm sure you have seen TV shows where they used to have a whole all white cast, and all of a sudden they do a remake and they throw a black person in there. I think the example I can think of right now is How to Train Your Dragon. They made one of the main characters black, if I'm not mistaken. I'm not a big fan of that. I understand they're trying to show diversity, but that's tokenism. That's just putting a black person in that category just to say that there's a black actress in there. No, give me my own princess. I want my own Disney princess. Do a live action of Princess Tiana instead of making The Little Mermaid black. A lot of people are upset at that, and I can understand that. But kudos to Hailey Bailey. She did a very good job. But I felt like that was tokenism, putting her as says. They didn't need to do that. But Hollywood has a way of trying to influence culture. I will not have the time to talk about everything that I wanted to talk about. But the last thing I'm going to say to you this morning, and I'm going to pass this around. So you have to promise me you're not going to take a whole bunch, so everyone's going to have a little. Can you take one and pass it around? You can't eat it. You don't like it. So I want to propose to you the concept of a universal republic, meaning that the whole world is one world. All the cultures can mix and mingle. And then I hope that in 100 years from now, that a school like this has more diversity. I consider myself a part of the history of the community because I am the first and only black teacher, both at the junior high and at the high school. And although that's very cool for me, I don't want to be the last one. I hope that in 100 years, a lecture like this is not even necessary. I want to thank you all for being here this morning. Have a great rest of your day.
Ska vi